What's going on, guys? A couple of weeks ago, I posted a question on the Twitter timeline or X timeline, whatever you want to call it these days. And the question was, I'm calling all dedicated recreational lifters and barbell supremacists to try and see something. The question was, those who have had success getting stronger, what are the biggest lessons you've learned from your training? And this got, 14.3K views, hundreds of responses. And as I analyzed the responses, it really broke into 5 different categories based on everybody's responses. Like everything just got bucketed in, right? So there was a lot of trends going on there. And those trends really came out to be a few different things. The first one, everybody was talking about consistency. Everybody was talking about having proper form. Everybody was talking about making sure you're eating enough and fueling your training enough. Everybody was talking about continuously looking for ways to add weight over time. And then just overall showing up. And I thought a lot of the responses were really, really good. But it also left some stuff to be desired, because what good is training consistency if your programming isn't in place, your form isn't in place, your nutrition isn't in place? It'll get you somewhere, but it won't get you the results that you should have had, right? So what I'd love to do on this video is I'm going to break down some of the responses, some of the more popular responses that I got based on each category, give a discussion on all of them, and then kind of talk a little bit more about the lessons learned. So number one was just consistency and long-term thinking. That is an incredibly important metric. If you're not going to be consistent and you're not going to train long-term, you probably aren't going to see success in getting stronger. That's the classic thing just in the fitness industry in general, not just strength training, and not even in the fitness industry. This could be anything: business, jobs, family. Like if you're not consistently executing on the things that you want to do, you're probably not going to have that much success with it, right? So Mike Light 77 said consistency beats everything by a large margin. Showing up every day for years wins. How many times have we seen people post online, yep, the reason I'm big and strong is I've been training for 10 to 15 years. I haven't missed more than a week for 10 years. I've been getting after it in the gym, trying to beat the logbook, right? Another one, consistency in the basic barbell lifts, upping the weight you're lifting for low reps over a long period of time. So that kind of matches our philosophy of using gross movement patterns, human movement patterns with the major barbell lifts, because they use so much muscle mass, because they use that muscle mass through a long range of motion, so you can lift a lot of weight. And by using those low reps and trying to add weight over time, that's going to lead you to, being bigger, being stronger, right? So another one here by Damian Hawking. Shout out to Damian. We've been interacting for a very long time. 2 things. If you get out of your own head, you're stronger than you think, and consistency beats everything. I really like this one. So many people think they have a cap to their strength. Like, yeah, it's great. Guys are pulling 405, 500, 600, but, I'd just be happy if I could pull 275, 315. That's enough. Anything more than that, I don't really need to do. Countless times have I worked with clients who say, yeah, I just want to get like a 315 deadlift or something. And in the consultation process, I'm like, well, we need to get you to 405. And we do, just with a very simple process. So, similar things to getting out of your head. A lot of people overthink their training. Am I doing this right? Is my form perfect? Is my programming perfect? Is my eating the exact right of carbs around my lifting meals? And they use this and they analyze their training too much that they never actually get in and just fucking push hard on a bar week in and week out, right? They're overthinking everything, right? So there's multiple ways you can get in your own head as a lifter. Sometimes maybe, life stress comes up and you can use that as an excuse not to go out into your garage and hit your squats, right? So more often than not, that is one of the things that kills consistency, is being in your own head about your training. And yeah, consistency obviously beats everything. Here's another one. Consistency above all. Even if you have a lousy program, you'll improve by just showing up. Patience, just a little more next workout adds up over the years. Yes, to some capacity, I'm going to fire back on this one. If you have a lousy program, you'll improve by showing up for a while as a novice lifter. If you're not following a good structured progression, you'll get a little bit strong, but you won't get nearly as strong as you would be if you had proper programming and execution in place. So I genuinely hate this, and it comes up a lot. It doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you're doing it. Like, yeah, it does. It does matter what your training looks like. And me as a coach, there's so many times you see that on timelines, on Instagram. It's like, oh, you're just showing up. Congratulations. And yeah, there's a point to that. But the overall thing is, if you want long-term consistency, you're going to need to start working and getting the results that you want. And in order to do that, you need to actually have a smart plan in place that you can execute on. But how many people do you see in the gym for 10, 15 years, or maybe you've been going to a gym for 5 years and you've seen the same guy there every Monday on International Chest Day, and he's never gotten bigger, he's never gotten stronger, he's been lifting 225 for 5 or 225 for 10 every single time, and he never makes any progress. So that's another example of somebody being very consistent, probably having a really lousy program, but they don't ever really excel at what they're doing, right? So if you're the type of person that wants to increase your performance, do not accept that, oh, I'm just showing up and I'm getting to the gym, pat myself on the back. No, we want to be doing things properly, right? Consistency is the most important factor in getting in shape. Okay, yep. Consistency over time is key. Do what you can with the time and lift you have. The perfection is too often the enemy of the good. Correct. At the same time, I'm saying you need to have a smart plan in place. We can go back to what I discussed earlier, which is paralysis by analysis, or, putting things off that you need to do. Maybe, the gym's too hot and you use that as an excuse not to go in there, right? Be patient and trust the process. This is Charlie Reeves. Don't get progressive overload and anxiety. This is a really good one, especially as you advance. Early on in a lifter's progression, it's really easy to be consistent because you're seeing consistent gains. You're seeing the weight stack on the bar. You saw in your deadlift 5-pound jumps from 135 on up to 355 before you needed to change anything. And that is addicting as fuck as a lifter. But then intermediate advanced stage kicks in, and all of a sudden now you're fighting and clawing for tiny little PRs. You're doing 6, 8, 10, 12 week cycles just to get a 5-pound PR. After you get even more advanced, you're setting a 5-pound PR once, twice, maybe 3 times a year. Probably not even that. Maybe even your lifts are going down as you change training focuses, right? So after a while, you should be hyper-focused as a newer lifter in the first couple years of your training on stacking weight to the bar. But after that, you have to adjust your expectations, and you can't get anxiety about the fact that because you've been training, you've been putting in the work, you can't get anxiety over the fact that you are going to be showing up in the gym all the time, but you're only going to reap the benefit of like a 5-pound PR every 6 months. But if you think about that, 5-pound PR every 6 months equals 10-pound PR on the year. Do that for 10 years, all of a sudden, maybe you're deadlifting 600 now when you ended your intermediate progression at 500, right? And that's some fucking big progress over 10 years. I would not be ashamed of that whatsoever, especially if you did it slowly, right? So you can't be overly obsessed with progressive overload out once your ability to adapt quickly is over, okay? How you subjectively feel has little correlation to your performance. Show up even when you feel like you don't want to. You'll surprise yourself and be glad you did. Yes. Consistency. I have never seen a lifter who only shows up when he feels good be able to execute long term. Rain, shine, ache, pain, depression, anything going on, you show up and you get under the bar and you do it regardless of how you feel, and you will be better for it, right? The longer you train, the more days you're going to not feel like doing it. You know, most of us more advanced lifters who have been doing this a while will say like 1 out of 5 lifts we feel good for. 1 out of 10 even. The rest are like, yeah, I don't really want to do this, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know it's good for me. And then the last one, it's like you had to drag yourself in there to do it. And it's funny because as you keep lifting, I've found that I need to have a little bit of a warning sign in my brain if I'm going into a lift and I feel good. Like it's deadlift PR day on a Friday and I'm walking in fucking ready to go. Like I'm going to pull this massive PR. For some reason, those days are the days where it fucking staples me. Then, on days where I'm coming in on Friday and it's like, holy crap, I've had a long week. The training stress is high. You know, I've been doing a bunch of stuff outside of the gym. My kid hasn't slept. We're trying to fucking buy a house, like all this shit, or whatever it is that's going on. And you walk into a gym on Friday like, well, I guess I'm going to start warming up and see if I can hit this top single. Warm up feels like shit. Your first warm ups feel like shit. 135, you like feel your back being like, oh man. And then you do 225, feels like shit. 315, wow, that felt heavy. 405, wow, that felt heavy. All right, let's do, pull 500 for my last warm up single. Holy crap, I quaked all the way up on that one. There's no way I'm going to pull my single. And then, 550 or whatever, you get tight and you push even though you're questioning yourself, and bam, it goes up really well. Meanwhile, the previous week or, the last time you did singles, you went in there feeling jacked and ready. Your bros are there. You had a bunch of pre-workout, no life stress, like you're fucking good to go, and that thing staples you to the floor. So, again, I love that how doesn't matter how you feel, go get under the bar because your chances are you're going to be just fine with the prescribed weight. Don't talk yourself out of a hard volume day because you didn't sleep this weekend, right? So, I love that. Consistency. I'm going to leave the consistency section of this with this quote from one of my buddies, Thane. Consistency is great. Showing up to the gym is great. But consistent improvement takes you places. And to have consistent improvement, you have to be executing well and doing it when you don't want to. So consistency is kind of a bullshit thing because you have to be doing things right consistently in order to actually make the progress. Okay? All right, so let's go on to the next kind of section of the responses here. Progressive overload and actually lifting heavy. Okay, so JP Hamstead, quote, to lift heavier weights, at some point you actually have to lift heavier weights. The whole add 5 pounds, the whole progressive overload thing. A lot of people want, one of my favorite things is like, people will say, I've been stuck on a 365 deadlift for 2 years. No matter what happens, I warm up to it and I can only pull it for, a set of 5. And if I try to do anything more, like, I don't know, blah, blah, blah. I've never actually tried to do anything more. And it's like, have you tried pulling 370 for 5 without fucking quitting or giving up on yourself? Or making some excuse as to why you can't pull it or why you can't do it today? Have you ever just grabbed that bar and committed to the set of adding weight, right? And then understanding over time that your training needs to accumulate for you to add weight. So a lot of the people in my world, the novice type lifters, they are so used to that addicting progressive overload. 5 pounds, 5 pounds, 5 pounds a session. And then, they kind of do the weekly thing, right? But then their whole programming mindset is, I got to add weight weekly or session by session. And they stall out, crash and burn really hard. So then as a lifter, you have to start planning to lift heavier weights and putting yourself in a situation where you can do that. That means cycling up rep schemes. That means periodization. A lot of my lifters that I work with, after they've ran an initial NLP, they've ran some early intermediate training where they're making weekly progress. We start them on 3-week cycles, maybe 4. And then after a few of those, very quickly, you need to start going 6 to 8 week cycles. And then after that, you need to be planning for 12-week cycles. But you have to always be planning to progress those weights in order for you to get stronger. But over time, the longer that needs to be. So, you take that whole Texas method type philosophy of heavy, light, medium. Well, that's a weekly thing. Well, after a while, you would need to start planning that into weeks and months. So you have, for instance, you could have a heavy week, and then you could have a light week, and then you have a medium week, and then you have a heavy week, a light week, and then a medium week. And then maybe you have like a heavy ramp up cycle, and then kind of a lighter one, and then a medium one, right? But that's over the course of 9 weeks or something along those lines, right? But you have to always be planning for increasing the weight on the bar. And then if you're in that newer stage, you have to commit to adding weight every single time. High volume and heavy weight is the only real way to make significant body changes, especially over time. They always say, is it volume that's important or is it the intensity that's important? It's like, it's fucking both, right? You got to think about it like this. Who is going to be bigger? The guy that can do, or let's use 2 examples here. A 315 squat. Who's going to be bigger? The guy that maxes out at 5 reps at a 315 squat or the guy that maxes out at 10 reps at a 315 squat? Well, the guy that can do 10 reps at a 315 squat probably squats at 1 rep max, way heavier than the guy that does 315. So he's going to be bigger. He's going to be stronger. So, it's a great metric, right? You want to do by the time you can pull a 500 single or, plus, you can probably deadlift 405 for 10, right? So you need to be getting stronger in intensity and volume. A lot of lifters, like, the progress might be slowed down for them, but it's like, hey, at one point in your in your intermediate stage, we were really happy with a 315 for 5 squat. Well, now you're doing a 315 for 5x5 on your volume day because you're so much bigger and stronger, right? So it's a combination. You just have to get stronger throughout with more volume, more intensity. It's always both, right? You can't get bigger unless you get stronger. Absolutely. Anybody who's saying that you can get bigger without getting stronger is absolutely full of shit, because that's the full premise of it. Even if you're not a barbell training, like the bodybuilder bros, it's like, okay, they'll say that getting strong is worthless, but they'll also say, yeah, I took my dumbbell incline bench from 75s to 140s for 10. What did you do? You got stronger, and you got bigger while you got stronger, so now you can perform better on those lifts. Avoid big jumps, minimizes injuries, focus on the compound lifts. They have the biggest ROI. I don't think we have to convince anybody watching this video. Like, if you're still fucking here, I don't have to convince you that lifting barbells is the thing. So avoiding big jumps minimizes injuries. Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially as you progress. We want a progressive overload. We want to do that at the appropriate rate for your level of training advancement. And, countless times people hurt themselves, not because of pulling a 1 rep max. It's because they try to do something that they are not adapted to or they have not planned for. Okay. So you have a set of singles planned at 405 and you decide, you know what? I feel like maybe 455 could go today, and you pull on it and you tweak your back and then you have to reset. Okay. So absolutely, we don't want to take too big of jumps. We want to plan for the progression. All right. So numero 3, section number 3, simplicity and program discipline. Okay. So sticking with the training program, don't overcomplicate things. Absolutely. This helps from a consistency standpoint over time too. So you have a very basic training plan in place. You just have to commit to doing it and executing it, not getting too fancy. Okay. Don't keep jumping to new routines. Don't skip workouts. Keep adding weight or volume. Then be patient. So, big one there, especially in our world. There's a ton of different barbell type training templates that you can go through. But really what most people have success with is developing a framework. So whether that's a 3-day heavy, light, medium type structure, whether that's a 4-day upper, lower type split, and then you use that framework and an appropriate rate of training advancement within that framework. And then you're consistent by not skipping workouts. That allows you to keep adding weight and volume over time and being patient. I'll talk to guys on consult calls all the time. Like, yeah, I did the NLP kind of, and then I did 5-3-1. And then after 5-3-1, I grabbed the barbell medicine, the bridge template. And then after that, I did, fucking Smolov squat cycle. And then, that stopped working. So then I decided to do a bench focus program and that went all right. And then, I got a Jeff Nippard program and did kind of a 10-week hypertrophy block. And yeah, here I am, but my maxes are only 275 on the squat. And it's like, dude, if we had progressed you appropriately, you had eaten well, gained body weight, we had programmed you based on your training advancement and how your training is responding, you'd be squatting 405 for 5 now, but you've been fucking around with all these different programs, right? So the best way to get stronger is use compounds, specifically barbells, absolutely. Do the big compound lifts, including the ones that suck. Train at least 3 times a week. These are all the most popular comments out of this section. So, do the big compound lifts, including the ones that suck. This is an important one, man. A lot of guys will find themselves, maybe just based on how they're structured and how they're built, being better at some barbell lifts than the others. So long leg guys. You got long legs and a short torso, maybe some long arms. This is going to lend you to being a better deadlifter and a better overhead presser. And it's going to make your squat suck, and it's going to make your bench suck because you got long arms. So a lot of these guys focus heavily on the press and the deadlift and then kind of just can the squats and the bench. Big mistake. Same coin as like the dudes with T-Rex arms. Shorter legs, T-Rex arms. They're bad at deadlifting, but they're awesome at bench. So and they're not really all that good at squats. So they're like, I bench 315, but I deadlift 335 and I squat 275. Like that's a legitimate thing. So people avoid the lifts that are hard for them. Maybe they avoid barbell rows. Maybe they avoid power cleans for whatever reason, right? But you need to have a full encompassing program there, okay? Nutrition and recovery. This is a giant point of contention here. So Christian Mind says, eat enough. I spent too many years trying to get stronger while staying lean. Should have just eaten the food. And he has a wonderful dedicated recreational lifter mutation that he's posted on the timeline here. Man, so many people insist on staying small over time. And, I think one of the big problems with this is that guys think because they've read starting strength, they've read in the forums about people gaining weight rapidly and all of that, that you need to gain like 60 pounds over the course of a year if you're like a 160 pound skinny fat dude. And you're like, yeah, you got to get to 225 by like the end of the year. And that's not always the case. I think younger folks generally tend to respond to that type of thing better, where if you're a 150 pound 20-year-old with no responsibility, like you're going to college and you want to get big and strong, you should be able to gain a ton of weight in a year, the first 2 years of training. Like you could be 220, you could gone from not lifting and you could all of a sudden be 220 by the end of your second year of training, deadlifting fucking 500, right? Now, if you're 45 and you got like 3 kids and you're a little bit overweight, you're 170 pounds, right? It doesn't make sense for you to try to gain a whole bunch of body weight. You need to have a little bit slower of a progression. But one thing here is that, and it's come up a lot on the timeline on X, so many people that are big, strong, jacked, have good physiques, maybe perform really well, spent a decade or more slowly building up over time. A couple on the timeline here. Shout out to Michael Wolf. He started training and he went up to like 300 pounds of body weight over a long time of lifting. This wasn't like getting fat really quickly. This was building up to like 700 pound deadlifts. I don't know how much he squatted, 600, like benching 405, like all of that nonsense over a long period of progression. And then you can cut back and show all the muscle you've gained. My buddy Francis, another great example of that. Power lifted, got strong for a fucking decade. 260, 270. Has recently done some bodybuilding stuff and he's cut down to like sub 200 pounds and he's fucking jacked and shredded. Just looks amazing. But that would have never happened if he hadn't have gone through that long build process. There's a ton of examples of that. And I quoted this a lot. Most people, most guys that are lean and strong, natural at 200 pounds spent time at like 275 plus. And then they cut down to expose the muscles they had. Very rarely did you get somebody who was 165 pounds and he did these slow little bulk cuts up to 200 pounds jacked. Like that just doesn't happen. Okay. So if you want to be big and strong, I'm an example of this too. I did not take my peak strength as high as those guys I just discussed. My peak body weight was like just shy of 250 to about 245. And now I'm about 200 pounds, can run slightly over a 5-minute mile. My strength is only down 10, 15% because I'm, more focused on endurance and jiu-jitsu at this point, but I'm able to be pretty lean and strong at about 200 pounds now because I spent a long time building up my strength to a certain level. So if you skip that process, it's very difficult for you to be big and jacked and, lean at a higher body weight. Okay. Diet and recovery are paramount, especially in the 30s. Absolutely. Get enough food and sleep. Yes. Those are such gigantic pieces to the overall program. It's very difficult to add weight to the bar over time past the novice stage if you're not fueling your training properly. If you're not getting adequate protein, you're not getting enough carbs in around your training sessions, if you're not hydrating well, if you're not checking those boxes, it's very difficult to have training success. So again, the advice of got to eat enough food and sleep. Well, that's good advice, but how do you actually do it, right? That's when you have to develop that individual plan to get going on that. Tracking and logging, keeping a training log. This one's huge to be able to see your progression over time, to force yourself. Like I've got notebooks that I have from back in college from when I first started the starting strength journey of where my numbers were that I can still reference back today. It's incredibly useful. And a lot of guys do focus heavily on the barbell lifts and progressing those, but all of your accessory work, you need to be tracking trends there. Like, if you get a deadlift PR, If you get a deficit deadlift PR, that's fantastic. If you get a dumbbell incline bench PR, that's fantastic. Be tracking your chin-ups, tracking how many reps you're getting on your fucking curls. All of that stuff matters with the progressive overload over time. You don't want to be the guy that's doing, 3 to 10 to 12 with 25-pound dumbbell hammer curls. You got to be looking to progress those. All right, so last one, technique, intensity, and injury. So form and control is everything, absolutely. Correct, from Walaka Hacker, client of mine. Correct lifting techniques so you can continue progression without hurting yourself. So those are the main, a lot of comments were on lifting form. And one thing that I'm going to push here is that you need to establish standardized form on your lifts. For us in the starting strength world, we have a model for how we're going to perform the lifts, and we're going to hold ourselves to it. Not everybody has that type of model in their head. So if you're going to be a squatter, you're going to be high bar squatting, you just got to have a standardized depth, standardized stance, standardized lift execution, and you push the weight up with that execution over time. Do not be the guy that claims he squats 405, but he squats is 8 inches high. Or don't be the guy that's adding weight to the bar, but squatting progressively higher. Don't be the guy that's adding weight to the bench, but is bouncing the bench more, right? Hold yourself to a standard of technique on all of your major lifts. So just by saying form, gotta have good form, well, what does that mean? I can give you a book on what that means for the main barbell lifts, but you're gonna have to kind of decide that for yourself at some point too if you're not following that specific progression. Learning to train with intensity. This is something that increases over years. Yes, you will not have training success if you train with the intensity of a golden retriever puppy. You have to learn how to grind. You have to learn how to strain. The conjugate boys always talk about learning how to strain. That's the point of the intensity stuff work, the max effort work, straining against heavy loads all the time, learning how to do that, learning how to nut up and send it and keep pushing when it feels like it's going to staple you to the floor. This is something that has to be developed, and that gets developed when you have a proper training progression in place. Injury happens. Don't let that be the reason. You can always find something else to train. Injury is often a teacher we need for the lessons we neglect. Absolutely. You tweak your back in the deadlift. One of the best things to do is get back in there and deadlift. Maybe start with light rack pulls, light pulls off the floor, continue to grease the groove. Sometimes maybe you need to avoid something altogether. Bench press is just bugging your shoulders so bad, but you can figure out how to do a neutral grip bench press that works okay. Your squat, your adductors flaring up really bad, so you learn how to adjust your stance to make it so you can keep squatting to some capacity. Learning how to do that is valuable. A lot of lifters will think it's a calamity. Like, oh man, I've fucked up all my progress. Well, I have reframed this as a learning lesson, because the fact of the matter is you're going to hurt yourself, whether that's in the gym or not. In fact, most of the time, when a client reports an injury, it's not from actually training. It's not from the deadlift or whatever. It's something that happened in life. Like, oh, I was chasing my kid while I was out camping, and man, I tweaked my hamstring. Now what do? Well, we figure out a way to work around. I tweaked my back, lifting my baggage on a flight. How do we work around that? Right? And take those things as a learning lesson, because it's incredibly important to figure out how to work around those, because if every time something hurt, you didn't train, you would probably never train. Okay? And then the last one, always commit to doing your first lift, even if you don't feel like working out. You'll often want to be working out by the third set. Absolutely. You're staring down the barrel of a hard session, your recovery, you don't feel good going into it. You're worried that it's not going to go. You just got to get in there and start warming up. Same thing applies to like heavy deadlifts. The last warm-up set could feel incredibly heavy. The first rep of your working set could feel impossible, but the chances are you'll complete the set. Those reps will lie, and your brain will lie to you going into your lifts. Don't let it win. Okay? So, as always here, tons of really good lessons here. So, consistency is great, but you need to be doing things right consistently. Okay. You got to make sure you're eating enough and make sure that that isn't what's holding you back in your lifting. Make sure you have good form when it comes to your training on all of your lifts and have that form standardized. Okay. You need to add weight, but you need to know how and at what rate to do it. Okay. And, everything in that thread was really awesome to read. Could be helpful, but a lot of the advice of just like being consistent or having good form or, just showing up, it's not really that actionable. There isn't an actual standard in place. So make sure the big thing here is like having standards for your lifting. Raise your standards for your training. And don't just think that showing up is going to get you to where you want to go. So, absolutely great little discussion there.